Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Simone here, and today we are doing another video where I react to my TBRs from last year. So this is the final one. This is my 12 books to read in 2019 TBR video, where I'm going to be talking about the 12 books that I said I wanted to read and if I managed to get to them or not. If you've watched the last two videos that I've just posted, I haven't done the best. I haven't done the worst, but I haven't done the best. So let's hope that today we can have a better shot at it. So the first book that I wanted to read in 2019 was a non-fiction book. It was The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot, and I read this one. I actually gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. This was a kind of basically is a book that focuses on a lady named Henrietta Lacks who ended up getting cervical cancer. I think it was about 50 years ago, maybe even longer, to be honest. I can't quite remember the exact timeline, but she got cervical cancer. She was a black woman who lived and she worked as a farmer, a tobacco farmer, I believe, in America. And when she got cervical cancer, she was taken to hospital, and the doctors there basically harvested her cervical, or some of her cervical cancer cells, and took them without her understanding she was giving permission. And basically, when she passed away, sadly, they actually used them in the sort of science community, and actually it's now known as Healer, hence Henrietta Lacks, so the first part of each of her names. It's known as Healer, and it is they've used her DNA basically and her cells in order to help, you know, breakthroughs in science, which is amazing. But there is also a lot of comeback on her family, in that she obviously her cells have been used and they didn't know anything about it. And so this book basically talks to her family, and it talks about their attachment to that knowledge and just different bits and pieces. It's really interesting to read. It's definitely worth the read, especially if you enjoy kind of reading about science and that kind of thing. It was definitely fascinating, and yes, I did read it. I gave it 4 stars. The second book that I wanted to read was Illuminated by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and I did read this one and I gave it 5 stars. It was in my favourite books of the year, which I will link down below. That went up last week. And yeah, so I really loved this one. I'm really looking forward to continuing on the series. I need to actually get the books first, but I am looking forward to it. And yes, I'm so excited to continue on and read more from these authors, because Illuminate was a great sci-fi book that had lots of mixed media in and was just really interesting. And yeah, I didn't think I would love it as much as I did, but yeah, it was definitely a great one. The next one on the list is 3 Dark Crowns by Kendall Blake, which is the first in a series, and I did actually manage to read this one as well. I gave this a 5 star as well. Actually, I had a really good time reading this one. This follows a world where in each generation 3 triplets are born, or a set of triplets are born, and each one of them is the queen, is a queen, and they are heirs to the throne. And the only way that one of them can actually get the crown is to basically kill the other 2. And so they have been separated pretty much their whole lives, and it's kind of about that. Each one has a different type of magic. So one of them has elemental magic, so she can deal with like fire and water, etc. One of them is one of them is a poisoner, so she can ingest poison, and she can also you know, make poisons and use that. One of them is a naturalist, so she has the ability of use plants basically, but she also can speak to animals basically, and different bits and bobs like that. So it's a really interesting book. I really enjoyed it. Again, not something that I generally would have expected to love so much. Is a YA fantasy. It's not really my genre, but I really enjoyed it. Next up, we have the first book that I did not manage to get to, which I'm gutted by, because this is actually a book that I've been really excited to read. This is Cell by Stephen King, which is probably the Stephen King book I'm most looking forward to reading. And for some reason I just still haven't read this. This basically follows a virus that is carried by cell phones. So every person that has the cell phones essentially gets a call, and then that person then is infected with the virus, and it's not unlike what we probably would actually see today, and this follows a man named Clayton Riddell, who is trying to reach his son before his son switches his phone on, but time is running out, and it's kind of about that. It's about kind of virus. I love to read books about like viruses and kind of world plagues and that kind of thing. I just find the whole thing really interesting. I love like apocalyptic dystopian books, so this sounds really interesting. It was also Stephen King, and I just can't wait to read this book in general. And for some reason I just still haven't picked this up, but I do really want to. Next up, I wanted to read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I did manage to read this one. I've read 3 Daphne du Mauriers this year and absolutely loved all of them. Rebecca was the first one I read, and it basically follows a woman who is working as kind of a companion to an elderly lady, and while doing that she meets a man who asks her to marry him, and so she goes to Mandalay, which is where he lives, and when she moves there she realizes that her new husband's deceased or previously deceased wife is very much still present in the house. The housekeeper is very much still you know, almost in love with her, and something is not quite right, and it kind of goes from there. Again, this was obviously I feel like Rebecca is the most popular of Daphne du Maurier's books. It's not actually my favourite of all of them. I did give it a 4-star though, and I just think her writing is amazing. She does gothic so well, and yeah, I just really enjoy her. The next one is a book that I also never got to this year, which is a little bit sad, but that is Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. Paula Hawkins wrote The Girl on the Train, which I really enjoyed. I was actually bought this by my friend Lorraine, who I used to work with, and yeah, I'm just a bit gutted that I never got to this. I do really want to. It, I believe, follows a woman who, her sister tried to call her one day and she didn't answer, and now her sister is dead, and they say she jumped and drowned, and she said she doesn't think that this is true because her sister was terrified of the water, and she said it would never have happened. I believe it's got some kind of hail back to like witchcraft and sort of like the drownings and the witch and stuff, but I'm not sure how much of that is present in this book. I do really want to get to this, like I said, but I just still for some reason haven't, but I do think that I will get to it this year. Do I say that all the time though? So next up, I wanted to read Final Girls by Riley Sager, and I did read this one. I did give this one a 4-star. I really enjoyed it. It basically follows a woman named Quincy who is part of what the media have dubbed the Final Girl. So there's 3 of them who each have been the final girl left after a big kind of massacre or a tragedy of some kind, and now one of them has been killed or has died, and one of them has died under suspicious circumstances, and the other 2 have now kind of met up, and it's kind of about what happens. I really enjoyed the way this was written. I know that not everybody has enjoyed this. I know that specifically Charlie from Charlie Brooke really didn't like this one, but I really enjoyed this one. I think it just had enough kind of like mystery for me to be really intrigued, and yeah, I just think it was something a bit different than anything else I've read before, so yeah, I really loved this one. Next up, I really wanted to read Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. I believe this was the last Rainbow Rowell book I had to read at that point. I know she's now published more, but I did read this one, and unfortunately I really did not like it. I gave it a 2-star. I was not a fan. I do not like Rainbow Rowell's adult books. This is the second of hers. I think she's only written 2 adult novels, and I've really not liked either of them. Attachments just was so, I don't know, it really annoyed me. It was also very offensive, and yeah, it just was not for me at all. It follows a man named Lincoln who is a security officer, like an online security officer for this company, and he basically looks at people's conversations. He reads people's conversations where they email each other at work, and he starts listening into this, he starts looking at this conversation between these 2 girls, and he falls in love with one of them, and then it spirals from there. It's just really bad. I really didn't enjoy it. I did actually buddy read this one with Nicole, and we both agreed that this was terrible, so I don't know that I'd read any more of her adult books if she comes out with anything else, but I do really like her YA, so I'll stick with that, I think. The next one on the list was actually another one that, funnily enough, I buddy read with Nicole as well. This was In the Woods by Tana French, which is the first book in the Dublin Murder Squad series. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4-star. Each book in the Dublin Murder Squad follows a different set of the police officers from this squad, so each book is completely separate, but it also you can read them like one after the other, or you can read them in any order that you want. This book basically starts off in Dublin in 1984, and it is about 3 young children. So there is 2 boys and a girl, and they go missing, and then when the police go to look for them, they find 1 boy left. The other 2 are missing, and the boy doesn't remember where they are. He doesn't know. He has blood in his shoes, but he doesn't know how it happened, what happened to him, where he is. 20 years later, that boy is now a police officer for the Dublin Murder Squad, and he has been keeping his past a secret. But then there is a 12-year-old girl who is found murdered in the woods where he went missing when he was younger, and he now finds himself investigating a case that may potentially have some connection to what happened to him. I did really enjoy this one. Like I said, I gave it a 4-star. However, it does not really tell you at the end, you don't find out what happened to the original children. You find out what happened to the 12-year-old, but it doesn't go any further. I imagine it probably does in the next book, but yeah, it didn't in this one, and that was kind of a bit annoying to me because I just didn't want to. I felt like it needed to at least have some kind of ending to it, but yeah, I would like to continue on with the series. It is very slow burn though, so it's just definitely something to go in with the mindset that this is not a book that will, you know, it's not like action every turn. Next up we have Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, and I loved this book. Again, this was in my top books of the year. This basically follows a woman whose sister went missing 20 years ago, and she's now trying to figure out what happened to her, and it's very gory, it's very gruesome, it's very, very interesting, and I loved it. It was kind of a complete surprise to me, a revelation, because I think that I found a new favourite author. I definitely am looking forward to reading more Karen Slaughter in the future. Next up is the penultimate book, and this is Station 11 by Emily St John Mandel, which, yes, I also read. I've done pretty well this time. This one is a book that I didn't like though. I gave it a 2-star. This, I felt like I had high hopes because I really enjoyed the sort of start section, but I just didn't enjoy the way that the book went. This is a dystopian kind of a post-apocalyptic, like during the apocalypse, I guess. So this basically follows a world where this virus hits, and basically like 95% of the population is killed, and then it jumps to sort of however long later, when that 5% is still around, and it kind of is talking about what happens to them. It's very philosophical. The writing in it is very, very intense. It's quite jarring. It wasn't really something that I enjoyed reading, and I'm glad I read it, but I don't know that I would read more from the author just because it was the writing style I wasn't the biggest fan of. And then the last book on this list is the last one that I unfortunately did not get to, and that is Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. I love this cover, but unfortunately for some reason, again, I just didn't pick this one up. I do really still want to read this though. This follows a girl named Maddie who is allergic to the world. She hasn't left her house in the last 17 years of her life, or the 17 years of her life, and then a boy moves in next door, and she wants to you know, risk it for him, I guess. And yeah, I'm really interested in this. I've heard really good things about Nicola Yoon in general. I know she's written another one, The Sun Is Also a Star, which I'm really looking forward to picking up as well. But yeah, I do really want to get to this one. Yeah, again, like I said, I just haven't picked this up for some reason, but it's definitely on my must-read list. So there you have it, guys. In 12 books, there was only 3 of these ones that I hadn't read, so I feel pretty good about that. I think that, you know, that's a good percentage to have read. Like I said, I am focusing more on my goals for next year, I've decided, or for this year now, 2020. So yeah, I really want to up my game a little bit with my TBRs, but we'll soon find out how I do with that. Let me know in the comments down below which of these you've read and if you liked them, and if there's any that you think that I should read quicker of the 3 that I have left over. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I shall see you next time for another video. Bye guys.